Welcome back to the Intuition Incubator. Today, I'm excited to have with us Leland Holgate. Leland is a military veteran who served on one of the most deployed squadrons in the Air Force on an elite forces team. Having grown up in a military family, his understanding of stress and resilience was profoundly shaped, as I'm imagining was his distance from his intuition, but we'll find out. He faced numerous challenges, including a life changing accident that left him paralyzed and a long struggle with addiction. Through his dedication to yoga and healing, he transformed his life and founded the Willful Warrior, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting veterans and first responders. Leland's currently pursuing a double doctorate in neurochemistry and neuropsychology. Welcome, Leland.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, I have a feeling that you have a lot of experience with both avoiding your intuition and finding it in rather painful and rewarding ways.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we start by kind of telling us uh, what when were you furthest from it? Like what happened when you can look back, we can kind of look back sometimes and say, I knew, you know. Tell us when that was.
Yeah, it started happening towards the end of my military career when I wasn't actually serving, post injury. Um because during, of course, as you know, I'm a heart math certified trainer as well. You can actually find coherence, firefighters, EMTs,
Yep.
military personnel. We find coherence by using our tactical breath. And when we're in our missions, intuition is on, like it's kicking. You know, not to step left for some reason. You know, you better pull your buddy over this direction, and then an explosion goes off.
Yeah,
But
that's a really important point. I just want to belabor for our viewers for a moment. You can literally be in very fast paced emergency situations and be extremely coherent and intuitively tuned in so that you know what to do when without having to think about it. That's really key. I always say your serenity is your only emergency even when you think you're literally in an emergency. Leland speaking to this first respond if you can be a first responder and be in coherence inside your brain and body, we all know that that's possible then. Sorry,
yeah,
go on.
yeah, and it's the way that I always explain it to people is I was in my purpose, right? In that moment, I was in my
Mhm.
purpose, and I think
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest reasons we all lose our intuition or lose that connection with our intuition, which is
Oh,
where I
right.
found myself post injury. I didn't have a purpose. I was laying in a hospital bed. I had nothing going on. So what happened? Story took over. All of
Mhm.
these stories about, oh, I'm stuck like this, or stories, but focused on the challenge that I have now versus being in my purpose, out there doing what I was supposed to be doing. And though obviously now that I have the 20-foot view, the military was not really what I was supposed to
Listen,
be doing,
exactly.
but
Right.
it was a key piece to my story. And yeah, the post military swing is where I lost touch with that intuition. And I think that's where we find a lot of our military veterans and why we have a almost 44 a day suicide rate right now, because after
Wow.
the military, there's just a
Yeah.
big hole right in the center of you, purposeless and missionless.
Yeah, but I wanna ask you a question because, like, most people would say, "Well, yeah, of course, you were paralyzed in a hospital bed. You couldn't do, I mean, to what we would the viewer would think is, well, yeah, you couldn't do what your purpose was or what you couldn't do anything. You couldn't move your body. So why wouldn't you why are you calling that story?
Yeah, it's, for me, the reason I call it story, and this is what got me started. I wanted to be an MD. I was going the physician route. And then I recognized, I don't want to be a pharmacologist or, nothing against anybody that went into that route, but I decided it's time to head a different direction because the physician that walked into my room just vacuumed the hope right out of the situation.
Uh,
I mean, I'm just shy
yeah.
of my 20-year birthday. I have a contusion at my upper spinal column at C1 and C2 that shut everything down. And his literal message to me when he walked in is, "Well, you got a bum rap, kid. Looks like you damaged your spinal cord." And this is 1999. We just barely grasped on to neuroplasticity then, right? That was a baby. as far as ideas go. So his whole thing was you can't heal nerve tissue. You're kind of stuck with what you got. Hope. That's completely vacuumed out of the room.
Jeez. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that
So
that was why story took over.
right, but what you're calling now story, you're saying that now in hindsight, you recognize it as story. Most people would say, well, that was fact. That was
Right.
reality. That was the case.
Right. Right.
And so, how do
Exactly.
you know now that that was just story?
So I know now that that was story because there were moments when you tune into the roughest patch that you've ever been in your life. There
Mm-hmm.
were most certainly messages that were coming. We just weren't listening because we were digging into this. So when I
Hmm.
tune into it, there were several times that I can think back and realize he's full of crap. Don't listen to that. There's always a chance, there's always an opportunity, but I allowed this to take over because,
He's
of
pointing
course,
to his brain for
y-
those that are listening, his mind. Yes.
we're just
It's also listening audio, right?
yeah, yeah, the simulcast for those that are listening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like I allowed the brain's stories to take over and override the heart telling me, like, "Don't give up, keep going. Everything is going to work out some way, shape, or form." So I had those there. It's just I chose to dig into the doctors coming in, 3 times a day and reminding me, "Yeah, this sucks. You've got a bad bum rap here."
And they're the expert, right? And we're
Yeah.
trained to sort of see, just sort of pass over our knowledge. I call that in the intro of the show cognitive offloading.
Yep.
We
Yep.
stop thinking and just say, oh, this person's going to think for me, whoever
Right.
it is. It's
Right.
not that doctors, whatever, like Leland said earlier. It's all,
Yeah.
there's a place for everybody. But this tendency to say, whoever it is, could be your neighbor or your best friend, they said, this is what I need to do, or this is the best, or they think I'm so great at this, or whatever, I've got to do this, or I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Cognitive offloading. We just let other people take over, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, which is why I always with anybody I'm working with, I tout the rule of 5. The 5 people you have around you and are talking the most, are you're experiencing the most, you become those people. What they say, what they think, what they feel, and what they do is recorded by your brain like you did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It means you got to pay attention to who you're putting around you, right? It's
Yes,
got to be a very
exactly.
conscious process.
Exactly, and that was also proof to me that even challenge authority figures in your
Yes.
story, in your experience. Challenge those people. Yes, they're an authority. He went to school for 8 to 9 years to get his degree and to understand more about the body. However, that doesn't mean he knows my potentials and possibilities. He just knows what I'm dealing with right now and ways to help find a solution, potentially.
Potentially, right. Like, don't stop thinking, like, be curious, right?
Yeah.
Like, take
Yeah.
it in and then do your own research. Just
Exactly.
think,
Exactly,
like,
and then watch your intuition skyrocket. Watch it
yeah.
skyrocket. Your heart takes over in those moments, like, "Alright, cool, he's surrendering finally. Let me get these messages going up to the brain that should have been going up to the brain, and then we can filter this all out to the rest of the body."
So, do you have a moment where that you can recall when you were listening to the physician that you're like, there was something talking to me? Like,
Yeah.
can you remember that? You
I
do.
can, yeah, it was the 3rd day, which is why I tell everybody, challenge everything, including your own stories, not just the authority, you're your own authority, challenge them all.
Yeah.
The 3rd day he walks in and he does this managing life expectation speech,
Jeez.
it's typical, it's what they do, they manage your expectations so they can, help you find some sort of semblance of what they feel is a solution. But the moment he started doing it, that's when the heart took over. Something was burning in my chest and I was like, "No!
Huh.
Exploitive no." And I wasn't trying to be rude, but I just basically told him, "F no, doc." And the moment I said that, my brachial plexus lit up, that big complex of nerves right in your shoulder, and I felt this energy of like, that tingle you get when you open the best gift ever, except it
Yeah.
went from my neck down into my shoulders. And that was like stunned me for a minute there. And that was it. I just looked at the doctor. And I was like, "Hey, not to be rude, but can you get the hell out of my room and send my friends in? I have a couple conversations that I need to have." And that was
You
it for
said
me. I
that?
was like, "You got to go, doc. You got nothing I need. Go, 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 go."
Wow. Wow. And so what happened next?
So next, I went through talking to my friends, like, of course, in these really tight knit, um, groups and squadrons, we are family. We are together. And they were there. I get emotions welling up when I think about it. They were there 24/7. It didn't matter if I was sleeping. It didn't matter if I was awake. Somebody was sitting right next to my
Oh,
bed, making sure I
jeez.
had what I needed. That's the level of loyalty that you experience in the military. That's kind of hard when you get out because that's not really present in today's society. It can be,
Yeah.
but the next day was key because, of course, I'm talking to my friends and asking them, hey, just move my arms, move my legs. I have a feeling that if we start moving some of these things, what I experienced earlier can happen more often. So, again, my
Wow.
intuition just kicked
Yeah.
in and
I
told
have a
me,
feeling.
get
Right.
these things moving, get everything. You may not be able to move them, but somebody else can move them for you. Get them moving, get things going.
Yeah.
And so we started that. And within 12 hours, my new physical therapist walked in. And I mean, get this for chance and possibility. The one male physical therapist the military gave me was also an Ashtanga yogi. And this is
Well, then,
1999.
yeah. That's not a coincidence.
Tell me the
No.
potential that, like, oh
Yeah.
my God. So dude walks in, he's an Ashtanga yogi, and he says, listen, this is going to be a little different. It's going to be a little interesting. But besides the typical physical therapy, stretching, and everything else that we're going to be doing, I'm going to walk you through some yoga practices. And I just kind of kinked my eyes like, dude, if I could move my legs right now, I'd kick you in the throat. Yoga. What joke is this?
Great.
What a funny guy, really hilarious. And that's when he imparted on me that yoga is just mindset control and pranayama, the control of the breath that controls the life force behind everything. And he imparted that out of 196 sutras, which are threads of knowledge inside of the yoga texts, four of them are about the physical asanas. You know, those really cool poses you see the 20-year-old in the sexy Lululemon outfit, standing in. That's not yoga. That's
Yeah.
four of the sutras or threads of knowledge. And that's when he gave me my first breath experience and blew my mind because when he took me into this experience, the same thing that happened when the doctor was there happened, but 10x. Like, this time
Wow.
it went through my arms and through my chest, and I started getting, like, a little tightness or a pinch in my rib cage showing some of the damage that I had done, but still, it was like, "Holy crap, what the hell was that? What did you just do to me?" And you can imagine I was hooked from that point
Yeah.
forward. Hooked.
What did happen? Like, you're studying neurochemistry and neuropsychology now, like,
Yeah.
what happened
Yeah.
with the breath when
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happened?
So there is, I'm actually switching and moving my master's to study under Gordon Mitchell down at University of Florida, and he's one of the
Oh,
geniuses that
okay.
has done experience with cyclic hyperventilation, which is the anybody that's done breath work, when you
Yeah.
inhale, exhale without pause, that's cyclic hyperventilation. It's creating and modulating very different waves of energy in the body, which upregulate all of your amazing happy hormones. It upregulates dimethyltryptamine, dimorphin, all of these amazing healing compounds. But what it upregulates the most when you're doing some of these holds and experiencing intermittent hypoxia, acutely, of course, chronic is
Mhm.
bad, the upregulation of what's called brain derived neurotrophic factor jumps through the roof. And BDNF is a gene inside of your body that activates the same name of a protein. And that protein
Mm.
is what creates your brain and spinal tissue when you're about 5 weeks. So, in the first 5 weeks of your conception, that neural tube that's forming your brain and your spine, that's all brain derived neurotrophic factor. So, whenever you're doing these practices, you're quite literally creating neurogenesis within inside of the body. You're creating the chance for the body to create natural stem and progenitor cells, and you're upregulating all of these trophic factors, which are very neuroprotective and neurohealing. So
Mm.
now that I get to look back, I get to see why that happened. But of course, you can imagine 19-year-old kid who's paralyzed. I'm like, whoa, what did
Yeah,
you just do to me?
and all you're doing is
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He took me through 30 rounds of inhales and exhales, 30 inhales and exhales, and then hold it at the top and boom, welcome home.
wow, wow. Welcome home now, that's is that the name of your
It's the name of the
Yes,
breath technique, yeah, and
that's
it's
the name of
it's
best technique.
and it's I did that because that's how it felt, right? When
Mhm.
I died in that moment, I was dead for about 3 minutes and 48 seconds when I snapped my neck. And I had that one of those out of body experiences where I literally watched the state trooper revive me in a most odd way. It was he played a xylophone on my rib cage with his
Huh.
knuckles. It worked, got my heart pumping again. But I
Wow.
described this to my friends and they're like, "How the hell did you know that?" And I was like, "Dude, I watched him do the whole thing. It was the most peaceful experience I had ever
Huh.
had. There was no thoughts, there was no wants or desires, no needs, concerns, or worries. It
Yeah.
was just like I had come home. And every time I do the breath work, I find that place of
Mhm.
peace, that in
Mhm.
between, that void that we all know is there. And every time that we did it, I just felt like, wow, okay, that's and so I dubbed the technique with the welcome home method. And unlike other breath methods out there, I don't poo-poo on anybody's breath. They're all amazing and they have their places, especially heart math breathing. I do that all day long. That
Mhm.
CO2 breathing and everything else. But when it comes to the welcome home method, we include a gambit of several breaths, the alternate nostril breathing. So we use yoga knowledge, qigong
Mhm.
knowledge, all of these ancient techniques brought in and mixed with neuroscience, psychology, and epigenetic evidence based information.
So how do you know what breath to use for what?
That's where the study comes in, right? When you look at modulating in and out through your nose, as you inhale, you're regulating your serotonin 2A receptors, which are your fight or flight. And then as you're exhaling through your nose, you're modulating your serotonin 1A receptors, which is that relaxed way of being. So you're literally modulating these things. And it's just by studying a lot of the research that's already out there and then, of course, practical application by myself. And we have some research coming up to further this and really get super specific about the breath. But
Mm.
basically, you just take each individual breath, what the ancient text says about it, and then you go over to the evidence based side and figure out what they have found out by studying that type of breath. What is it eliciting inside of the body neuroscientifically? What actually is happening physiologically? And when you can connect those dots, taken quite a while, as you can imagine, because the information is all
Right.
over the
You gotta
place.
grab it. Yeah.
But, over the course of 20 years now, I've gathered enough information to kind of elicit certain responses. For instance, my spinal cord champions, I work with a lot of spinal cord injuries and have that pretty figured out to a science to hear a lot of them experiencing regrowth and reanimation of certain areas that has not been normal
Mm.
for sometimes 30 plus years. And now they're moving things again. It's amazing.
Amazing, amazing. So, yeah, and just at a basic level for listeners then the breath on the in, if you're feeling anxious or stressed, in other words, we wanna elongate the breath out because that's stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. If you're having a trauma response and your trauma response is not activated, but is more like depressed and, like down, right? Like then you would be having, then you'd want to stimulate the other way, the breath
Exactly.
in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, when you follow just those simple patterns, the breath
Yeah.
really becomes a very easy and effective tool to use for whatever you need.
And I love the way that you name that welcome home method you know, because that's how I see intuition, and there are those moments that I think when you're doing certainly what you're describing with the breath and your experience, I've had moments like that, just like when I've worked with an energy healer. I remember I'm going to have her on actually. I worked with an energy healer once, and afterwards, after the first setting, I was like, I feel more grounded than I have ever felt in my life. Like literally anything could happen in this moment. And I had this knowing,
Yeah.
right? It's all okay.
Mhm.
Like, it's not about this human experience. It's
Right.
not about, right?
Right.
And like having an accessible way that to get to that place when you need to be there, which I think we would all do a lot better if we were there a lot more of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. A lot of the things we see going on in the world would probably not be happening because everybody'd just be too damn busy tuning into their heart.
Exactly. And what would happen then? Like, what would the
Oh,
world look like if
yeah.
you just took care of you and I just took care of me? what would
Yeah.
happen?
Oh my
Not from
God.
a selfish standpoint, from the standpoint of like regulating.
Right, right, exactly. What feels good to me? Let me do more of that. Something as simple as that. If we were all doing that, war would disappear, poverty would disappear. I mean, so many things, so many issues that are in the world right now would disappear completely.
Yeah. And always, I was actually on a call the other day and some people were like, and we have to do something. I'm like, no, what you have to do is internal.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. There's no doing that's necessary. There's being that is
there's
necessary. Be right here. That's it.
right. And what do you feed the field when you're right here? Because we have a 3-foot diameter around us, right? That
Exactly.
is vibrating energy and then that's contagious.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, and just for listeners, you're no longer paralyzed. I mean, we never really outdated said that, but maybe people have intuited it. But you healed yourself from that, and
Yes.
then there was a long history of addiction. What happened? How did you lose your way from your intuition then?
Yeah, I noticed what I did was I really dug in on the physical component of yoga, which is pretty
Mm,
natural for a lot of folks. They feel good after stretching and breathing. So they just look at it as this great, my body's getting what it needs without recognizing, crap, my mind needs a little help as well. And I should probably
mhm.
tune into the stories that I'm running besides just fixing this body. So I recognized that I hadn't handled a lot of the stories from my childhood. I hadn't handled any of the combat stress or,
Yeah.
the last mission that we did inside of Yugoslavia during the Kosovo conflict. On our way out, we got lit up by a SAM site. So it was 8 minutes of yanking and banking, alarms going off, everybody I mean, it's like a 10 or 11 scale earthquake
Mm.
inside of this thing. And we're all thinking, all right, we're about to die. We're in a cargo jet. There's really no getting away from these things. Thankfully, they only painted us, which is what they like to do. They like to freak us out. But you can
Gosh.
imagine in that moment, I thought everything was done. And that sets in, as you know, a lot of stress all throughout the tendons, muscles, all in the mind and everything else. So mix that with my childhood and I recognize, wow, okay, there's a lot inside of the mind and inside of the heart that needs to be handled. And instead of handling it, I chose to do what most people did. The military had already given me 13 different medications, benzos, antidepressants,
Oh,
antipsychotics, all these
yeah.
other things, which just essentially
Right.
turned me into a zombie. And then we also know that
Mhm.
opioid addiction
Yep.
starts at the
Yep.
pharmacology level and then
Yep.
moves to the street level, which is exactly where I went. I could only get so many pills from my doctor. I could only get so strong of a medication from my doctor. And then eventually it wasn't cutting it. So I moved on to the street drugs and the alcohol and just numb, 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 numb. Anything I could do to run from the pain because it was quite substantial. And that was about a decade evaporated out of my life there. And then had that one friend. There's always that one friend that
Mm.
takes pity on you, sees me sleeping on a couch, homeless in the backyard of some rundown house, and put me in his truck and, took me to his house and told me, he's like, as long as you stay off the sauce, as long as you stay clean, I've got you. I've got a space for you. Let's get this going. And I went through about 6 weeks of hell. I don't suggest
I
anybody
bet.
goes
I
cold
bet.
turkey like I
Yeah.
did. Don't do that.
Yeah.
If I didn't have the breath, I would not be here today.
Yeah.
I was crawling to the bathroom on my elbows. It was the worst experience ever. And also a way to lock in, like never doing that again. I'm good on that
I'm good.
experience. Cool there.
Right.
But yeah, it was finally I had recognized, okay, it's time to truly come home. It's time to truly manage these things and clean out the store closet of all the stuff that you've been holding on to. You've been repressing it for so long that it's swollen, that it's inflamed. Let it go. Start working on this stuff. And that's when I started on my yoga journey and becoming a yoga instructor and now teacher trainer and all of that good stuff was recognizing, yeah, you only took half of the yoga knowledge and used it for the body. How about we do the
Right.
whole body thing now? Now let's do the whole organism. How
The
about that?
whole right, the whole machine, yeah. Yeah, because, we don't need, right? Like, we can live a perfectly, quote, "healthy life" in with our physical body. We don't need to do anything else,
Nope.
and most people don't.
Right.
But it's really not going to be the happiest, most purposeful, most peaceful, most healthy life that you're going to have. So tell us about some of the successes that you've seen with the breath technique in your work.
Oh my goodness. I'll start at one of the biggest ones because I'm like jumping inside like a little 2-year-old about to go to Disneyland. The latest that we just got a message back was from one of our stage 4 cancer patients, had to go in for emergency chemo. They gave him like 5 months to live.
Oh, wow.
He had already started and had his, breath practice going, and then decided to go ahead and do the chemo because obviously it was at the emergency level. And the mixture between the two, 5 months later, not a sign of cancer in his body.
Oh.
Yeah, I got buzzes going through my body. It's like one of my most favorite stories so far. But to add on to that, we have had several MS patients go in for their dye test and MRI, come out of it and get a hold of me telling me, "Oh my God, I stopped the progression of the disease. It's no longer moving forward. It's stopped." And they're kind of of course, to them, they're, "Oh, it's a miraculous healing." Yeah, it
Right,
was
right, right. Sort
a
of.
they did nothing. It was just miracle. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I was thinking that when you said about the cancer patient, like, I'm sure, the doctor's like, "Oh, the chemo did its
Yeah,
job."
chemo did a great job.
That's
Yeah,
it.
chemo. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then of course, so many stories inside of the spinal cord injuries, my spinal cord champions, from complete injuries. And for anybody that doesn't know the difference between an incomplete and a complete injury means you feel nothing below that injury. Once
Mhm.
that spine is compressed or something is hurt there, you don't feel anything below it. We have complete spinal cord injuries, moving legs and toes, feeling sensations below what they said they would never be able to feel or were told they would never be
Mm,
able to feel. And then we have other spinal cord champions like myself who are already up and out of their chairs, on walkers, on crutches. So it's just amazing to see. Um, Also, another one for anybody out there, because this is pretty prevalent in our society right now: hypertension, high blood pressure,
mhm.
any kind of cardiac issues, heart issues that you're having. Breath is magic for it.
Now, when you say heart, I mean, that's interesting because, I think a lot of people with heart issues, there's a lot of fear around doing intense breath work because then you can feel your heart
Uh huh.
sometimes a lot,
Yeah.
and that feels dangerous.
It does, and per a lot of, unfortunately, the very limited research that they've done on some of this stuff, they'll scare a lot of people back from trying these things out, but just know anybody that's listening to this or watching this that has any kind of issues with the heart, I work with those people personally. We make very slight adjustments and very intentional shifts to the breath work, and here's what I want you to recognize. Yes, we're stimulating the body on the inhale, but remember, we're also jamming the brake on the exhale.
Mhm.
So, what
Mhm.
that's called is called modulation. And when you look at everything in the universe, it's frequency, energy, and vibration. Your heart has rhythms, but it also has electricity and magnetism. Same thing with your brain. There's electricity and then there's magnetism. So, whenever you look at the heart has rhythms and waves. The brain has rhythms and waves. How do we shift those things? We have to modulate them to shift them. I have to breathe
Mhm.
in and modulate that, and then breathe out to modulate that. And whenever you do that, usually these very high peaks and troughs, especially when it comes to heart rhythms, start to modulate and start to even out into that coherent pattern because we're modulating these things, creating and upregulating very specific hormones inside of the body. And then the moment that we do these holds, which in yoga are called kumbakas, they are revered by the ancient technology or ancient societies as being the stillness in the storm. That's when a lot of these upper regulatory things start to happen. You start to create a lot of that brain derived neurotrophic factor. You start to create a
Mhm.
lot of these healing compounds inside of the body. So the first one or two breath sessions for anybody that's dealing with heart complications can be a little stressful just because the brain is going to tell you, "Oh my God, I can feel my heart rate increasing. This is not what I wanted."
Right.
But you get what's called the deep diver effect the more you practice with your breath. And all of a sudden, the body lowers and lowers and lowers,
Mm.
all the way to the point where we've had people on their blood pressure medication either seriously reduce the medication necessary. Some of them have walked away from it completely, never looked back, lost 20, 30 pounds in the process, and now have never felt as good as they have felt right now.
Mm. Yeah, and I do want to give our listeners a caution that I do think this is something that needs to be done with a trained professional
Sure.
because
Sure.
breath, especially when we're talking about MS and heart and things like that, seizures can be induced and all those kinds of things. Um, but with someone who really understands what they're doing, absolutely. I guess that's a don't do this at home warning.
Yes,
Don't-
please don't just experience the breath work on your own and
yeah.
try to make your shifts and adjustments. I think what you said is very important. And if not me, find somebody that isn't a Wim Hof. I love Wim Hof. I'm sorry. I don't mean to poo poo on a lot of these guys. They're not medical professionals. They are breath facilitators teaching you
Mm.
something that they learned or was taught to them. Find a medical professional, someone like myself who's actually studying these things, the physiological effects on the body, because what I do more than anything besides teaching breath is help tweak and shift and adjust that practice for people that need it to make sure, hey, don't do this breath. This is not going to be good for you. You can experience this breath. And of course, we make adjustments. And for folks with like heart issues, it's super gentle. It's not the breath
Yeah.
most would experience. It
Yeah.
becomes a lot more gentle, a lot more intentional. So, yeah, very important what you said. Make sure you do this with
Yeah.
somebody who knows what they're doing. A heart math certified trainer can help you. I can help you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very important.
Yeah. And, one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking that I really love, because I always talk about, how this brain and this body is a machine, right? Like your heart's beating, you didn't tell it to. Your salivatory juices are doing whatever they're doing. You're either hungry or you're full. Where you didn't, it's doing it by itself. It is running, right? And what you're talking about is, and I think the way some Gurdjieff people talk about it, we don't have any control over this thing, but we can become a really good mechanic. And so, what you're really talking about, I think, is that, like, in every example you're giving, it's like, listen, this is a machine. It is more advanced technology than anything else that we could possibly ever lay our hands on in this lifetime. And guess what? You can learn to drive it instead of it driving you.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a beautiful analogy because when you look at it that way, this amazing bioorganic computer and device that we chose to drive, this avatar that we chose, like, this character, if we work with it, it's amazing how it will work with us. There's this unison and symbiosis that happens when you recognize, okay, I kind of allowed the program to take over here. It's time to rein that back just a little bit. And then also making sure that you find that balance to recognize that you're not over forcing things and you're working with your body, tuning into that's what your intuition is for. It's to work with your body. What's going on right now? Get into your heart, figure out where you're feeling things, soften into that part of your body. And I guarantee you, you'll get a message telling you exactly what to do, how to be, how to think, how to feel,
Yeah.
all these other things. And then everything just comes back to normalcy, coherence.
And it's interesting because, I think where people really get mixed up is like we talked about, the mind is so powerful and we get so into thinking and thinking. And so we're thinking about what we intuitively, right? As opposed to when you're doing a breath exercise or something like that, you're just brought there. So and people, I mean, I'd spent decades doing this, right? Like thinking myself into what was right for me
Sure. Sure.
until it's like, oh, that was so wrong,
Yeah. Or just partially right.
or
Right. Yeah.
partially right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
part of it, but there's something missing here.
Yeah. And there's a truth that you come to, right? Like you can't really avoid the truth
Right.
when you do that breath, or get to that state that I feel like you're talking about,
Yep.
what happens when people get to that truth? Because I feel like there are things we don't want to know, right? Like I
Sure.
don't want to know a lot of things that I know right now. I really
Sure.
don't,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, and there's a lot of things that I know that have really blown my life up.
Mhm. Yeah.
Tell me
Yeah.
about your experience with that.
Yeah, it's it can be a little much, a little, tough, a little overwhelming at first when you start this process. And again, why I think it's key to have a professional by your side. Somebody just remind you, you're doing well, keep going. What you're experiencing is normal. You repressed the real you for a long time. You thought your way through this life a long time. You did a lot of things that possibly weren't right, or like we talked about, partially true, and all of that comes to the forefront. Your awareness, as we know, as heart math certified trainers, comes right up to the front, and awareness gives us choice points. However, awareness, when not expressed or just finally figured out and experienced, can be overwhelming because you recognize, oh crap, it's all me. I got
Mm,
nobody but me to thank or blame for everything that I've experienced and enjoyed or not
mm,
enjoyed or whatever else. And that can be kind of hard. That can really pump the brakes for a lot of people. I know it did me in the
yeah,
beginning because the moment that happens, you feel these floods of emotion, and you feel this inevitable guilt, which you can push past. It's not that you're pushing
right,
past it, you're pushing through it, you're moving through it. You're allowing yourself to experience and recognize that, you're changing things that you wish you would have changed a long time ago, but it's okay.
yeah,
You're changing them now. Experience that guilt and shame. Let yourself feel it and watch it move, watch it transmute and change into something else. So the first couple of days especially was a little hard to handle for me. That
mhm,
first week almost was kind of hard, but then you find this really amazing space, that void that we're always looking for, the just being aspect of things, where you recognize the power, and blaming yourself or thanking yourself for everything is, I'm the solution.
right.
I am
If I'm not the problem, there is no solution. That's
exactly
what he
right.
probably says. Right.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. It's like, I am the
Yeah.
solution to all of this. Holy crap. That's empowering.
The
That's
power.
super empowering because then I don't need anyone else. I don't need anything else. I have everything I need right here, right now, inside of myself. And all I have to do is just continue to get more heart centered, more heart focused, and more out of my head, and everything else just normalizes in its own right, just like we talked about. When you get into your heart over and over and over again, what are you doing? You're modulating. You're
Right.
modulating. You're modulating. So you're creating all these, taking these peaks and troughs and creating these really nice waves of
You're fine
information.
tuning the machine.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
you bring up you went exactly where I was going to go. What the next question that I was going to ask, of course, probably because where our heart rate variability is probably like entrained right now.
Yeah.
Um, but listen, you had 10 years of addiction, right? I know you have children. Um, you know, Many of us have been through that or on a side of it or whatever, and as a psychotherapist. I worked extensively with it, and lived it myself. And even aside from addiction, right? Like when you come to that place where you honestly look at yourself and say, oh, like I did my kids this, my kids, like for years, would look back and just my heart would break when I would think about a stupid thing.
Yeah.
One thing that I did that my kid would never even remember,
Right.
but I can't let go of it, right? And I know that so many people walk around with just feeling so much shame and guilt about those things. And the second part of the same question that I want to ask you is on the and it's related, not the same. But this idea that, we get older, right? Like I'm in my 50s,
Mhm.
and it takes us a long time sometimes to learn these things, right? You meet the My son works for Dr. Joe. Like he's young, he's getting this now, right? I I had to like drag people through my hell and, do all the things. And there was years where all my brain could go over was like, "Ugh, but I'm so old. Like there's nothing that it's too late to do anything. It's too late to have an impact. Why did this take me so long? Why didn't I know this then?" You know, speak to that because
Yeah.
you brush stroked it, right?
Sure. Sure.
But it's a big deal, and people will get hung up on that in their heads,
Yeah.
and they don't even realize that they're continuing to go over the narration that but they screwed up and they're different. They really did something terrible, terrible,
Sure.
and it's too late for them. Maybe
Right.
good for Leland, but not, speak to that.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
How did you forgive yourself? How did
I,
that really look?
yeah. Yeah. It's work. It is. That is the work and breath work. That is the work. And any of the work that we do is just being okay with yourself. And sometimes it takes quite a while. I mean, trust me, even though I had all of these things breath wise and everything figured out, I probably didn't figure out if you're going to put the full compilation of, oh, it hit him until about 40
Yeah.
because I had repressed all the sexual childhood abuse and all the other stuff that I finally allowed myself to look at the addiction and all the pain and drama that I caused my family and friends and kids and all these other things. So I mean, here I am about to be 46 and same thing. It's like, hey, I finally got all the pieces to the puzzle. Midlife. Great. Yay. Halfway
Yeah.
through, I figured it out. Awesome.
Right.
But to me, I've changed that story. It's exciting now because, and I'll tell you this, I look at pictures of myself in my 20s and in my 30s. I look younger now than I do then.
Wow.
My
Wow.
jaw is wider than then. That's one of
Wow.
the things with breath work is if you haven't read the book, it's called Jaws: The Story of the Hidden Epidemic. It's an evolutionist and an orthopedic surgeon that got together, took pictures, and measured people's nasal passages, rhinometry measurements. And within just a few months, and I'm noticing the same thing, we do it at our retreats, you'll see the change in your jaw structure. You'll see the change in your airways, your shoulders broaden. Everything in your body
Oh,
literally
wow.
starts to heal itself and move back to homeostasis.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of stories, and I'm sure if you look it up yourself, just Google it, 60-year-olds that look like they're 30s.
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
people had a rough 30s, rough 40s. Like, look at their pictures at the age of 30s and 40s. You're like, oh my God, is that even the same person? So, my message to anybody is it's never too late. I just got started on this ride and I'm super excited about it because all of those things beforehand were just learning lessons, right?
Yeah.
And for anybody that's experienced addiction, or alcoholism and has destroyed either their children or their family or whatever else.
In quotes, destroyed.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
So
It's
they
all in your
think.
mind. It's
Yeah.
all in your mind. I
Yeah.
promise you, you did not, you taught them in ways not to be certain ways. And now think about what you have. You have the enormous opportunity to open up conversation like I have for years now with my kids. They are so normal and have kids and own homes and whatever else because I opened those conversations up with them and allowed them to talk to me about how they felt about what
Yeah.
I did. And it was completely normalized. So now it's as if it didn't even happen inside of their experience. They see a normal dad that had a 10-year stretch of bad things happen to him, but they recognize that that wasn't the end of the story. So they too now recognize, holy crap, if my dad can do this at friggin' 40, I can do this right now.
And geez, it makes me emotional to think about it. It's such a what you're saying is just so important because the gift that we give our kids when we become self-aware, when we begin to say, I messed up. Gosh, I just lost my way. And I'm human. And so are you. And it doesn't. I have a child who has a disability as a neuromuscular disorder. And I tell him all the time, like, I don't care if you learn biology. I don't give a shit. Like it's fine, whatever, get an A. I don't care. He's all about A's and everything. I said, I want you to learn this, like this inner knowing. Like, how are you gonna live your life? How are you gonna get through? And be compassionate toward yourself and compassionate toward other people and, you know, and manage when it gets harder, when it feels frustrating, or what you want to do to take control back of your machine. And, and all of those things, right? And so to have those conversations with your kids and give them the gift of being able to say, "Oh, it's okay if I make a mistake. Shit, look at dad. He really screwed up." Like it's not that big a deal. And we can learn from that mistake. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter what happened.
Right.
It
Right.
matters how you handle it. What would
That's
it
it.
be like if we taught our kids
Yeah.
to not get so attached to what's happening,
Right.
but how you handle it, whether you're talking about, being an alcoholic and blowing up, so to speak, their lives or screwing up something at work. Like, yeah, that happens.
It does. It
We're
does.
human. Like,
Yeah.
what a gift to allow everybody to be human.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that way, you get to recognize, oh, failure is not final. Oh, it's just feedback. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's just part of my soul contracts, part of
Yeah,
why I was here. Some people get
exactly.
to do it early, they've got other things. So listen, I'm catching up to my son in terms of awareness, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
he's got this big body thing to overcome in this lifetime. But this mind thing, he's out of 14. Took me 40 years, to get, like we all have different journeys, right?
We do. We
There's
do.
no
Yeah.
reason to compare ourselves, right?
No, not at all. It's all pieces to the puzzle. I think that's the beautiful thing. The way that you said that too is comparison is the thief of joy. So comparing yourself to somebody else's life, crap, they figured it out in their 20s. I figured it out in my 40s. I might as well just give it up. Like
Right.
all of it's like there's no reason for any of that. It's all pieces to the puzzle. Some people figure it out early and inspire you to figure it out in your 40s. Some people figure it out in their 40s and inspire people to figure it out in their 20s. It's all a give and play. It's just life.
It's just life.
It's this
Yeah.
video game we chose to come and experience as, individual pieces of the source, divine, God, whatever you want to call it, her, him, whatever your view is on that, we're individual expressions of that, of energy. So it's all part of a beautiful symphony and dance. Why would I? And I mean, I've done it in the past, but why would I get so caught in the guilt and the shame of what I messed up or what I missed out on when I've got all the opportunities right now?
Right. Right. Why we always just say, why throw good money over bad?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, Leland, well, thank you so much. This was really phenomenal. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? Anything, and then I'll ask you how they can get to know you, find you. But what do you really want? What are you just burning to let people know? Is there anything that you really just want the listeners to know?
Yes, yeah, you are everything you need, everything you've wanted, everything you've been waiting for. You are the hero that you've been asking for, praying for, and waiting for the entire time. And I want you to remember that all of these modalities that we talk about, whether it be breath work or meditation, these are all pieces to the puzzle. These are all tools. You are the most important
Mhm.
aspect, and tuning in further to your heart will allow you to find the way to go, the way to be, and the ways to think moving forward. And it's one thing that I caution people constantly when they come in on the breath work, especially. Remember that a good thing can be used as a numbing agent as well. If you're using the breath work and you're using meditation to run away from the things that you're feeling, that's not what they're meant to do. That's not what they're meant to be used for. I am a very, very big proponent of anyone that comes in that you must feel it to heal it. If there's something coming forward, we need to express that so we can change that.
Yes, I love that because there's so much spiritual numbing out there.
Oh my God, so much, so
Yes.
much.
Yep. That's why I always use the boots on the ground, eyes open work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'll tell people all the time, it's like, you love the get high on your own supply stuff that I teach you. That's literally 15%, if 20% of my practice. Through the day, I'm doing my heart math breath. Through the day, I'm just slowing down, touching something, putting my feet in the grass, being in the moment. That is 50 to 80% of the work right there, my
Whatever
goodness.
that moment brings.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yep.
What's this moment teaching me right now? What should I be aware of right now?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for that. So tell us, I know you have a program that you run. Tell us how people can reach you, work with you, be part of your community.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So unfortunately, by the time they hear about it, they will not be able to get in on this round. Plus, I only have 4 spots left, anyways. Those are going to go really quick. This 12-week program that I run is called Awaken the Warrior Within, and it is the compendium of all of the information, research, and study that I've done over the past 20 years, which takes the breathwork aspect, but also mixes in my book called Nourishing Resilience, which is a nutrition guide based
Mm.
on I don't do fad diets, blah, 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 blah. I manage macronutrients. Let's manage basic building blocks of your body. Let's make sure we personalize it to you on top of all the other aspects that we use with the breath work and the neuroscience techniques to help increase your sleep, which is a super, super important aspect of your life. So basically, what we do in this 12 weeks is we literally reset the subconscious programming because you can do as much breath work as you want. You can do as much meditation as you want. You don't fix that underlying program that allows you to wake up and go, here we go, another day.
Right.
Then nothing else changes. So that's literally what this program is about is resetting the subconscious programming and instilling while pruning, instilling the program you want to run. And of course, we get a complete reset of all of your receptors and your hormonal profile. And we tweak everything personalized to you moving forward. So we'll have more of those. We usually do about 3 of those a year. The next one will be
Mhm.
in May or June of next year.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us. I'll have all of that in the show notes as well. Thank you, Leland.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here with you.